Happy hunting, everybody! You've come across one of our Precon review videos from our series of Duskmourn Precon reviews. If you want to watch the entire video, unedited, all 4 of the Precon reviews together, you can click somewhere over here on the screen. There will be a link to go to that one. If not, sit back, enjoy the show. You're about to watch one of the Precon reviews. So let's just dive straight into the deck. It's helmed by Amanatu, the Veil Piercer, which is 1 white, blue, and a black. That's Esper. For a legendary human wizard. It's a 2/4 that says at the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 2, which is look at the top 2 cards of your library and decide whether you want to keep them on top or put them in your graveyard. And then each enchantment card in your hand has Miracle. Its Miracle cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 4. So the way that Miracle cards work is if it's the first card that you've drawn that turn, you can just play it for its Miracle cost, which on the printed Miracle cards is cheaper than mana cost. And then obviously with Amanatu in play, all of your enchantments that you would draw, if it's the first card you've drawn that turn, it's reduced by 4 generic mana.
Yep. So you're still required to do any colored pips, but you could essentially, in some instances, get enchantments down to pretty much just the colored pips.
Totally. So that's kind of what we're trying to do in this deck, it seems. It's playing both enchantment creatures and enchantments that have relatively high mana value so that you can cheat them, quote unquote, cheat them into play by drawing them first and then playing them. Miracle's very strange. I'm excited to see people's reactions to Miracle and playing it first. One of the things that I wanted to note before we dive into it is how to play Miracle. The first thing that you need to get really good at is anytime you go to draw a card first in your turn, it's also any turn. So Miracle breaks the time restrictions. So enchantments,
just like Madness.
Yeah, enchantments you can play at flash speed if you Miracle them. That's a huge part of how this deck works, is flashing enchantments in via Miracle. So the way I would recommend doing it is when you're going to draw your first card each turn, regardless of whether you know what it is or not, set your current hand aside and then draw that card. It should be the only card in your hand. If it has Miracle, you're required to immediately reveal it as Miracle, and then you decide whether or not you want to play it. I guess you don't. Do you have to reveal the Miracle cards as you draw them if you're not going to Miracle them?
On Amanatu anyway, it just says that you can cast it, so you technically don't even need to reveal it. It's just it's the first one you've drawn, you can cast it.
Oh yeah, it's a main ability.
It is.
So let's say you draw Terminus, which is in the deck. You haven't played any top deck manipulation, you've just drawn it off the top. So you've set your hand aside, you've drawn this card as your first card this turn, you then immediately reveal it. It's a 6 mana, put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries with a Miracle of single white pip. This is an unbelievable card. So you then just get to pay a single white and cast the spell. It's a really neat ability. They haven't done it in forever. I think when was the last time they did Miracle, John?
There has
outside of the 40k precon.
Oh, outside of the 40k precon, there was a black Miracle card in a precon some number of years ago. It was like it did something with returning creatures from graveyard to battlefield. I think it was something like that. It was like a black parallel to Entreat the Angels or something like that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so this is an ability that they don't print very often. So for them to be giving some love to Miracle while also giving some love to an Esper enchantments deck, this is really, really sweet. So Amanatu is at the helm of the deck. I would recommend keeping that at the helm of the deck. However, there is an alt commander that you have as well. It is the Master of Keys, which is X, white, blue, and a black for a legendary enchantment creature, Horror. It's a 3/3 with flying. It enters and you put X +1/+1 counters on it, and you mill twice X cards. So whatever you pay for X into its mana value, that becomes the X's there. And then each enchantment card in your graveyard has Escape. The Escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Pretty straightforward. It's recurring enchantments from your graveyard while also fueling the absolute heck out of your graveyard. Master of Keys is very sick. There's already been some discussion on some high power forums on how ridiculous this card is. I'm going to go ahead and say for the precon, just leave it in the 99. Let's go ahead and not put that in the command zone yet. It's really good if you build around it, but it's also just very good in this deck. Because it's an enchantment creature, it will be reduced by 4 with Aminatu.
Which can be applied into the X cost, really.
Exactly.
So if you end up miracling the Master of Keys, you can have that X be a guaranteed 4 at no additional cost.
Yeah, it's one of the cleanest like alt commanders that works really well in the 99. There's kind of a problem sometimes, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well, with alt commanders that they almost are printing just so that you take them out of the deck and build another deck with it. But the Master of Keys works really, really well in this deck. Any type of recursion on a creature like this is just bonkers. So love to have the Master of Keys around.
That definitely seems to be the case here with the fact that like something that we haven't actually even brought up a couple times now from the last couple precons we've done, but the last couple of precons, Face Commander has now been in borderless. This is now the first precon where the alternate commander also comes in borderless.
Yeah, just very beautiful. Like I said in the intro, like the art for this set is unbelievable. They went absolutely ham on it. So there is a total of 10 new cards in the precons, including the commander and the alt commander. So a couple of really cool new cards in this set. Ancient Cellar Spawn is the first one that I want to talk about. It's 1 black and a black for an enchantment creature that's a horror. It's a 3/3, and it says each spell you cast, it's a demon, horror, or nightmare. It costs 1 less. And then just a total side piece of text that says, whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast it was less than its mana value, target opponent loses life equal to the difference. Huh? You just play this with like Bolus's Citadel, and then you just kill the table by playing your deck. Or like what this is going to do with Aminatu is every time you miracle an enchantment into play, if you've reduced its cost by 4, you get to just dome somebody for 4. Like, I've never seen something that so blatantly is rewarding you for cheating. It's so good. Let alone the fact that it gives a cost reduction to demons, horrors, and nightmares, which is a sub-theme of this deck.
Yeah, because I'm noticing in the deck you have a card in here called Demon of Fate's Design that lets you cast an enchantment with life once per turn instead of its casting cost. So instantly right there with this friend, you get any enchantment down, miracle or not, with its life, and then the Cellar Spawn will dome whoever equal to the full scale mana value of the thing that you paid life for.
Yep, it's crazy. Couple of other cards to talk about. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, John, each of these decks has a room in it.
At least one, yes.
Yeah.
Does this one maybe have a few more?
Ones.
I was going to say, because it's the enchantments theme.
Yes. So let's talk real quick about what rooms are. It's a new enchantment type. You'll notice it's a split card. So I'm specifically right now talking about Cramped Vents and Access Maze. So you basically, from your hand, you get to cast either side of those. It'll come in and unlock itself, which is going to trigger things.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it will. But that's technically the way it works, is it comes in and then unlocks whichever side you paid for. You get the ability of when you unlock this door on the enchantments, which functionally is when this card comes into play, do the thing. And then unlocking the other side, you just pay the mana cost of whatever the other side that you didn't cast was. So you'll play it, it'll enter with one side of it unlocked, and then you can pay to unlock the other side. It's a really cool design space. I am completely head over heels for rooms. Anything that has modality to it has some play. We talk about this all the time here on the podcast. Anytime that you can add kind of a branching path of what you can do into your deck, you're just going to win more games because of it. So rooms is a cool way to do that while also being an enchantment.
Yeah, so unlike sagas that just do like a tick of things in a row and you have no control over them,
yes.
You do one side of a room and then you save the other half for when it's relevant.
Yep, it's very cool. So the way that Cramped Vents and Access Maze works, let's talk about Cramped Vents side is 4 mana. When you unlock this door, this room deals 6 damage to target creature an opponent controls, and you gain life equal to the excess damage dealt this way. So it's targeted removal on one side. The other side of it is Access Maze, which is 5 black and a black. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a spell from your hand by paying life equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost.
So just like that demon.
Yeah, totally. Which this is a sub theme in this deck is just how many enchantments can we cheat out really quickly. Notably, with Amanatu, the way that rooms are going to work is you get to choose which side you're going to cast. So, like, with Amanatu down, if you miracle this, you could say, oh, I'm going to cast the Access Maze half of this reduced by 4. So this becomes 1 black and a black. To have, I can cast anything else from my hand for just life equal to its mana value once during each of your turns. So I love this. And then at any other point, you can just pay 4 to just kill something on the board. This is ridiculous. A very cool card. So that's rooms. So that's the only time I'll explain how that goes, and we'll kind of keep rolling through them. Last new card I want to talk about in this deck. Well, actually, there's 2 more. I'll talk about 2 more. There's a new miracle card. There's a new black miracle card in this. It's called Metamorphosis Fanatic. So it's 4 black and a black normally for a 4/4 human cleric with lifelink. When it enters, you return up to 1 target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield with a lifelink counter on it. Pure upside. And then it has miracle of 1 and a black. So if it's the first card that you've drawn on any turn, you just get to play it for 1 and a black. You get a 4/4 with lifelink, and anything else out of your graveyard also with a lifelink counter.
I did definitely read that at first and said it came back with a finality counter.
I know. Nope. Everybody thought it said finality, but no, it's lifelink counter. It's a little bonkers.
Did you die? Sadly, yes, but I got better.
100%. Yeah, so you can use these things to recur themselves, or not recur themselves, but you can recur a creature, and then if it dies, you can find a way to get that back to your hand, play it again, it comes back, it's great. Notably does not include a finality counter on it, which would exile it. We'll get to finality counters later in the episode. Last new card for this deck is Fear of Sleep Paralysis, which is part of
this thing is so cool.
It's so neat. So the Fear of cycle is from the main set of Duskmourn, but they've included at least this one in here. And
there are others.
They're just enchantment creatures. They're nightmares. It's a neat little thing. So this is 6 mana for a 6/6 with flying, and it has the ability Eerie, which is whenever an another enchantment enters, or whenever you fully unlock a room. So whenever you unlock the last room or the last door in a room, it triggers to tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. Which stun counters typically prevent, if a creature would be untapped, it would remove the stun counter instead. So it keeps things tapped down for a little longer. But it has a line of text on it that says, stun counters can't be removed from permanents your opponent's control. So you play this, immediately tap something down, put a stun counter on it. It then never untaps as long as this thing stays on the battlefield. And then as you just play more enchantments or unlock doors in your rooms, this is what makes rooms really good with Eerie, is you actually get 2 Eerie triggers off of them. You get 1 when you play it, and you get 1 when you unlock the next room. Mm-hmm. You just put more tap and put stun counters on stuff and just permanently keep them locked down. So if you have a way to protect this thing, which there is a few of in this deck, you just play it, keep playing your enchantments, and you're just going to look up and the entire board is going to be permanently locked down.
Oh yeah. I'm been playing the game for a long time. I have a very soft spot for cards like Dungeon Geists.
Dude, this is Dungeon Geists on crack.
It is absolutely cracked.
It actually is Dungeon Geists when it comes in. Like it is 6 mana instead of 4. But then the upside of being able to continually Dungeon Geist off of each of your enchantments is ridiculous. Very, very cool. A couple of notable reprints in this deck as well. Spoiler alert, not many. The reprint value for this deck is completely abysmal. It's a very bad time, just to let you guys know.
That's a real bummer.
Yeah, currently sitting without the cost of new cards at $86, according to my Moxfield link, which is rough. There are 4 cards that are above $5 in this deck. Most notably, Ink Shield is reprinted here. Love to see an Ink Shield. It's currently a $10 card at the time of recording.
Wow, that Secret Lair one must have really tanked the price.
It really did. Yeah. Having a having a print to demand version of Ink Shield that you can just buy really tanked it. But it still is sitting at $10 even after all of that. There's an extravagant replication in this deck, which I had never seen before, so I'll just read it off. It's 4 blue and a blue for an enchantment. It says, at the beginning of your upkeep, you make a token that's a copy of another non-land permanent you control. Super cool. That's a $9 card at the time of recording.
Neat. I've never seen that card either.
Yeah, it's super cool. I don't know how I've never seen it. It's, oh, you know why? It's from New Capenna Commander. It's from the, like, have you never seen this card before, but it's really cool? Definitely with New Capenna Commander. Last two reprints that are at $5 and $6 respectively is Ondu Spirit Dancer and a Hall of Heliod's Generosity, which is a nice time. Love having all of those, but man, the rest of the deck has some sucky value in it. Trying to think.
How do we fix that?
Yeah, exactly. Let's go ahead and fix some of that. So a couple of cards that I think you should put into this, starting into the upgrade guide portion of this. First and foremost, I came across this and I feel like a very clever boy for thinking about this. This deck requires a Shadow of the Second Sun. Do you know what this card is, John?
Oh yes, it's that new aura from Modern Horizons 3.
Yes, I'll just read it off. It's 4 blue and a blue for an aura that enchants a player. At the beginning of Enchanted Player's post-combat main phase, there is an additional beginning phase after this phase, and that is untap, upkeep, draw. So what's really cool with Aminatou, this is also a 6-mana enchantment, which is exactly where Aminatou wants it, because it's 4 generic mana. So she can reduce this down to blue-blue if you draw it first in your turn. And Aminatou effectively has an upkeep and a draw trigger, and a draw step trigger. Except I'm realizing now, it's still really good to play. It doesn't do the miracle thing that I had hoped that it was going to.
Good try.
Correcting myself on this. But it still is like, Wilderness Reclamation is played in a ton of decks, and this is functionally a blue Wilderness Reclamation that also draws you a card.
Yeah, even if it doesn't do the cool miracle thing that you want to do during your turn, this sets you up to have your mana open for the off turn.
Exactly. It still is very good.
Miracle does work that way.
I thought it was exactly one step better than it was when I put it into the deck, but I still stand by it because she still has an upkeep trigger. So you're going to have your upkeep Surveil 2 twice a turn, which is super good. That helps set up for things like another ad, like Opt and Consider. I think both should be in this deck. Opt is a single mana instant scry 1 draw a card, and Consider is a single mana instant to surveil 1 and draw a card. So what these will do, you always want to have access to draw a card on somebody else's turn so that you can play your miracles off turn. There's a handful of ways to do that in this deck already. Brainstorm being the most important one of them, because you draw 3 and then put 2 back on top. So any of your cards, you can trigger Miracle off the top of your deck and then set up your next Miracle spell all with one spell. So Brainstorm is the best one. It's already in here. There's also a Brainstone in this deck, which is not my favorite card. If you can afford to swap that out for a Scroll Rack, you definitely should, but I'm not going to recommend putting a $25 card into your precon. So there's a few ways to do it, but I want to see more of that. So that's why I'm putting an Opt and a Consider into this deck. So with the Shadow of the Second Sun, like you said, John, it'll untap all of your lands so that you can immediately on somebody's next turn and probably the turn after it be able to do some miracle stuff and get these huge enchantments into play. Two more cards that I wanted to add into here. So 5 total that I'm going to be adding. There is a room from the main set that's not included in this that is Central Elevator. So this is also a new card. Central Elevator and Promising Stairs. Again, it's an enchantment. It's a room. So Central Elevator is 4 mana. It's 3 and a blue. For when you unlock this door, search your library for a room card that doesn't have the same name as a room you control. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So it tutors for a room. And then Promising Stairs is 2 and a blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. You win the game if there are 8 or more different names among unlocked doors of rooms you control. So if you have 4 rooms, which this brings you up to 3, I guess? Yeah, put another room in here, whichever one you want. So if you have 4 rooms in play, all the doors are unlocked, you win the game on your upkeep. But even then, just having 3 mana at the beginning of your upkeep surveil 1 is worth it in a miracle deck, because then that sets you up for your draw. Along those lines, the last card I want to add is Search for Esanta, which is a 2-mana enchantment.
That's a good
it's a
one.
legendary enchantment, actually, that has since been errated to, at the beginning of your upkeep, Surveil 1. Then if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you get to transform it into Esanta, the Sunken Ruin, which taps out of blue. It's a legendary land. Or you can just pay 3 and look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land from among them, put it into your hand, and put the rest in the bottom of your library. So it turns into a draw spell. You have so many non-creature, non-lands in this deck. There is, let me see my number here. There's only 12 creatures in the deck currently. There's also like 10 enchantments. There's 8 instants. There's 8 sorceries. Like this is a control deck. This is a draw go control deck where your plan is going to be Surveil 2 with Aminatou, draw your first card. It's a miracle card, surprise, or it's an enchantment. That's the only things you have to care about. Play it down, pass turn, and then you're going to be sitting there with your Terminus, with your Time Wipe, like being able to just kind of sit there. A couple other win cons that are in the deck that I think are really neat. There's a Shark Typhoon in this deck. This is probably one of the best cards in the deck. Because it will trigger off of the total mana value, even if it's reduced by miracle, to just make sharks. This is the first time that Arvinox the Mind Flail has been reprinted into a set that isn't. Am I correct on that, John?
Yeah, you're correct. Yes.
Yeah. Because they did it as the Stranger Things Secret Lair. And then they printed
as the Mind Flayer,
yes.
I think.
And then in Universe, they printed it as a Secret Lair. And now this is the first time it's included in something else. So Arvinox is really, really sick. And then, Entreat the Angels is an unbelievable win con in this deck. Anything that you get to miracle and just flip into a ton of angels is bonkers. Yeah. Oh, last thing to note on this deck, and then I'm done talking about it. I think it's a very cool deck. I'm really into it. They included a Read the Bones instead of a Dire Sight in this deck. Are you kidding me? We want to be surveilling. Surveil is a theme in this deck, and they included Read the Bones when they just printed Dire Sight, which is just Read the Bones, except it says Surveil 2 instead of Scry 2. What's going on, Wizards?
Must not have been ready for print yet.
Yeah, it must not have been. That might have been like a late ad into Bloomborough. But I think overall, this is not my favorite precon that I've ever seen them put out. There's little things about the construction of it that I find really annoying. There's not a ton of ramp. Obviously, they're planning on you playing Aminatou and that kind of being your ramp for the deck. There's like 6 or 7 other pieces. It's really not. It's kind of your standard, like you've got your Soul Ring, your Signet, all 4 Signets that you can play in the deck. But I would, with the average CMC of this deck being so high because of all of the enchantments, there's very little protection in the deck for Aminatou. So they kind of have worked you into this corner of needing to play Aminatou to be able to get your big enchantments out, but then not really including much protection for her, which you wouldn't need to do if you included ramp as well. Because if you just play her and she becomes the target, then like, cool, they've wasted all of their removal on killing Aminatou while you've been ramping to be able to play your big enchantments, just hard casting them. So I'm not a huge fan of some of the ratio or the stats on this deck. But I think if it pops off, it's going to be really cool. Overall, I think it's fun. I probably would give it a 6 out of 10.